Welcome to Livestream. We're going to be talking about Logic Pro 11 today, looking at or just discussing what people have found over the past week. Certainly, last Monday, I did a number of streams, and when I first installed and opened a Logic 11, I certainly felt some feelings, some disappointment initially, but I'm excited. I'm excited at the prospect. I feel like this is still an incremental style update, meaning we didn't come that far from where we were, and I don't think we've gone as far as they're going to go. The chord track has a lot of promise. I think there's some things about it that I'm ready to update already. For instance, and this is just an example, maybe to get us started here, but I really would love it to be able to take anything I've performed and try to create a chord track based off of the MIDI that I already have. So I could take maybe a song that I have a keyboard part. I mean, it's smart enough to know when I'm doing things with chords, and you could maybe say, do a literal chord track off of this, or, do what feels like the most centered chord over a quarter note or a half note or a whole note. There's ways, but it feels like they just rolled out the first iteration of it, and they're probably working on it more and more right now. So we'll see what they have coming down a little bit. I've read a lot of comments, and the comments over the past week, I've gotten 1,000 comments or more, and it's really split among all of you. Some of you are really enjoying the update. Some people are like, this is the final straw, I'm leaving. I was just, interestingly enough, I was just watching a teaser video for the new Reason 13 update that's coming out in June. And the first thing on their list of what they're changing is the browser, right? So it's easier to find all of the elements and things. How many people watching this video wish that we had a new browser in Logic, right? That comment has come up over and over and over. Now, I don't know. I tend to, when I'm doing my own things, be relatively simple, and it's easy to find stuff in the browser if you know where things are. But for some people who have, hundreds of plugins and a ton of additional loop content and whatever, maybe that does make the most sense as the feature that they really wish that they had. I have not, and I made a little list of things that people have experienced that I have not. I have not yet had a single Logic crash. It has never once just quit when I've been using it. And for a new update, I think that's pretty rare for me. I'm certainly have had lots of Logic crashes in the past, but no crashes at all. That's good. All of the third-party things so far that I have work. Nothing so far has not worked, which is also really good. But I haven't done a comprehensive test of everything that I have. But I do need to start looking this week and see which things have come out with updates. I don't know if what Waves is saying. I use a couple Waves plugins. My Nectar CS12 control surface, I'm assuming that they're going to do something with that to fully ensure it's working, but it is working right now, even without an update. And there's a couple questions in the chat. One of them is, will the Logic 11 update change how you teach your students? Not really, because I was already teaching tools and things to them, automated tools and instruments, and how AI is playing into all of this, and so we'll keep going. A lot of my students want to be musicians anyway, and so they're already learning that craft. None of them are going to give up being musicians just because Logic came out with what they did. And then what third-party things have I done so far? So far I've tested out a few things. Let's see. In terms of instruments, my Dreamtonics Synthesizer V seems to work. The East West stuff was already an older version because I'm not currently using the new Opus system that they have. And that seems to be working still. The Moog stuff is working right now. Like I have not messed around with Reason too much. I'm going to be messing around with that later this week. I want to see how the MIDI effects and things are working. My Rolling Cloud seems to be working. And all my Eventide stuff right now seems to be working that I've used. So a number of things are working just fine. I haven't done any of the song nights that I normally do. I have been waiting to really get more into, it's like I hate using tools on streams that I haven't really dug deeper into. And I'm finally getting to the point with that now where I feel like I can actually do some songwriting creation and not just have it be like really crappy sounds. I mean, that's a thing. You really do have to, you can't just use these new tools and expect them to sound good right off the bat. I think that was a misconception among things with a lot of users. They were saying, I just pulled this up and the very first thing I did, like what I did last week on the stream on Monday, I pulled it up and I just put in the first thing and was hoping that it would sound good, right? And that's the misconception with AI, generative AI as well. Any type of AI, that it's just going to do the end result from the very beginning. And that's not always the case with these tools. The part of these tools in Logic, which are AI, are not, they're not the type of AI that does stuff for you. Not the main parts. I think Apple, was being really careful, but they weren't careful enough when they explained it to people. I think they were just looking for headlines, getting in the news cycle for a day. The type of AI that we're using in Logic does a bunch of stuff for us. It's just not the creative choices, if that makes sense. It's not really giving us chords for a song, and it's not writing the songs for us. It's actually letting that center part, the central part of songwriting and creation, still be the end user. And what they're doing then is supporting that process, and we still have to make intelligent choices on what to tell it to do to make it work. Econ says, already made a few songs, woohoo! And then the question about Melodyne, I don't actually use Melodyne, so I haven't tested it out. Let's see. Bitterman is saying Command R has been consistently crashing Logic. And I'm nervous. Command R, huh? Which is funny because I don't use Command R for anything. I wonder if you changed it to something else. I'd be curious to mess around with that some more. Let's see. Search key commands. Let me do, see if it crashes the whole thing. What key commands? Anyway. Set all tracks to automation read. No, that's not the Command R. That's way more than the Command R. Won't even let me search for it in the thing. Oof. Repeat region. Let me do that. Repeat. Yeah, right there. Ooh. Well, it'd be interesting to see if you were to change that to a different key command, if it would still crash it. I don't want to crash it while I'm on a live stream. So I guess I will option drag things or just loop them. Yeah, so good discussion about that. We'll see. Sounds like there are some people with some crashes. Maybe it pays to use less key commands, which is funny to say because key commands are like the lifeline of some people's workflow. Cool. And then Bitterman says, for now, switch to option drag. I'll test it out after we're done on the stream. Like I said, I don't want to necessarily crash in the middle of a stream because that could just take the whole thing down. Anybody else? So some people saying they're having some crashes with very specific repeatable things. Again, since I've started using this and making things, I have not yet had it crash at all. Let me tell you my top favorite things now that I'm messing with this week, one weekend. I think that's where I'll go. Although let me, I think I need to do a quick thing with my routing real quick. Because I have, with the new update, I'm really decided to finally nail in my my external synthesizer setup. And so I have a number of synthesizers. I usually use them on a one-off basis in this room where I record videos. But for this, I'm gonna maybe do a little demonstration with this. I've got my I went through a really hardcore Behringer phase a couple years ago when they had all their new models that were mimicking old things. I don't have my original ARP 2600 in this room, so I can't use that. I just have the small format ones in here. But one of the things I really have enjoyed with the new studio instruments, as an example, is the whole, you can load any instrument into the instrument part of those session players. So I've been messing around with the bass player, and instead of using the bass instruments that came with 11, I use an analog synth and incorporate that into it, which is kind of fun. I actually really like that part of it, and that was something that when we first got the drummer track, that's a little more difficult. You can load any drummer you want into it, right? Including external drum kits, like MIDI drums kind of thing. But we don't really have the option to record like real acoustic drums using the drummer track as the source. We don't have there are robot drummers, I'm sure, but we don't have access to them usually. And so having the bass now and the keys, it means we can start incorporating some of our MIDI instruments that are external to Logic in that workflow, which I think is really cool. Some of the things don't translate that well. The bass in particular, if it's using all the different articulations and style things, those won't come through, but the notes will come through. And so I think that that's actually pretty cool. I'm catching up on the chat for a second. Good conversation in there. Sounds like a lot of you are talking to each other, which is kind of cool. Let's see, let's do D minor key signature. Chord track. Cool. I'm just going to go back and forth right for a moment. I'm just going to load up something. B major, D minor, back and forth for a minute. I just want to load up this the bass instrument and then connect my external synth. Show you how simple it really is, which I like. That part has always been, connecting external instruments is easy. That's not necessarily the new part, but session player, bass player, sure. We'll do retro rock for a minute. Bum, bum, bum. So this is, let me see if we've got sound. Okay, cool. So great. Sounds like a bass player, right? I really do like the new instruments, although I'm always blown away by some of the choices they're making here. For instance, look at this list of plugins on the bass. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Somebody's really happy with their plugins. Tube. Let's just go through these real quick. Tube burner, the bass amp, a compressor because we needed that, chroma glow, tube EQ, fat effects, channel EQ, limiter, and a space designer. Wait a second, right? Am I crazy? Because a limiter right here, that's fine. The EQ, we'll take that one off for a second. This EQ, I'm going to move the fat effects over for a second. Even chroma glow, but a compressor, maybe the bass amp designer, and maybe the burner. Here's the thing. Whoever programmed that chain has no idea what the fat effects is. Because the fat effects does almost every single one of those things. They're trying to do a feature dump on us. This is one thing I was going to complain about today. This one plugin, they have the limiter turned off, they have the compressor turned off, they have the filter turned off, they have the distortion turned off, they have the other bandpass option turned off. That's all of those plugins I just read to you right in one thing. And these, you can move them around. I mean, they have somebody there wasn't there at Apple who was designing that preset, wasn't there when they bought Fat Effects, and have no idea what Camel Audio envisioned for that thing, because that one plugin is all of those other plugins all together. This right here, maybe they said, conjecture, maybe they said, you know what? We need all of our instruments to use more CPU. Because we want more people to realize that they can't do this with their like M1 computers. So I don't know. That one part still kind of baffles me. This is like, and when I teach at the university, my goal as a teacher is to help the students understand how to be efficient with their engineering. And having 9 plugins on a bass is not efficient engineering, audio engineering, or software engineering, whatever. All kinds of engineering or laws of physics are broken with this. So a little rant. I'm going to turn off all of those for a second because what we're going to do next doesn't need them. But let's listen to that bass for 1 second without them all. Nice thing is, if we turn them all off, that's cool. We don't have to, we can remix it. It sounds like a decently naked bass, which is, I guess, good. Let's do the external instrument, though, for a second. MIDI destination. Oh, I don't have that plugged in. Let me plug that in real quick. I haven't done all my MIDI connections yet. That's next. Model D. I think I have to go on channel 1 for that. Audio input. I think we're on 9, but we'll find out in a second. No, maybe not. Oh, let me do test tone. 11. Oof. Why is that sound coming from? Interesting. Oh. There we go. And maybe down just a little bit. So that's an analog synth over to my right side of my station. I have all the knobs. It's a mini Moog model. It sounds amazing. It's great. And now we can just but now we can use that instrument along with this one. So that's just the deep, whatever patch I had loaded up yesterday. And so I'm not necessarily suggesting that that's the right sound, but we get to go through and actually we can use the bass player, session player with our analog gear or external keyboards or whatever. That's pretty cool. A. Mayland says, not all limiters comps are the same. Isn't that the likely explanation? Maybe. So here's the thing, though. We're talking about the default compressor with a 4.4 to 1 and a minus 24 threshold. And sure, this thing has a little bit of a character sound, but I don't think that sound of that particular compressor is going to be all that different than what we have in the Fat Effects. Maybe having the Chroma Glow is better than the built-on distortion of Fat Effects. Possibly. I mean, they seem to certainly suggest that, but until we've used it for a number of periods of time, we're not going to be able to really confirm that. The channel EQ may have some additional bands and things, but having the channel EQ and the tube EQ, I mean, we're just looking at phase upon phase upon phase instead of simplifying the phase. And especially in low frequencies, I think phase is relatively important. And so you can say, I really wanted this tool in my chain for the bass. I really wanted this tool in the chain for my bass. But at some point, is it really getting you something special? I don't know. That's a good question. Okay, let me see my monitor. Let's see. Bitterman says, yep, they're trying to wreck the M1s with these horrific pre-made channel strips. They've always had this issue with channel strips. Ever since the beginning, they loved, I don't know who's doing it, but and they're probably, even if they paid like an amazing producer, there are a lot of producers who've made amazing tracks who maybe are who could have been more efficient with their signal chains. That's not an insult. That's not a bad thing. But it shows me that sometimes they're using people or they're making decisions based on one thing. They're saying, you know what, let's really get people to think that these are amazing instruments. I think they're amazing instruments. I really like the new bass player. Even if you don't use the session player part of it where it's playing for you, the actual new basses that they've released sound great. And I could use them without the auto function. But that doesn't mean I'm going to need 9 different plugins to get there. You know what I mean? And then Bitterman's has right on target here with both of those. Let's see. Like when I use the vintage FET in the Logic compressor, I'm choosing it for a different reason than I'm doing with the Opto. I mean, I agree. I do that, but I think that it's the pool of people who are using those for specific reasons is growing smaller. And the ones who really do understand the differences on those aren't always using the software versions because they have the hardware version. So each of those compressors are based off of analog compressors. And if I'm in a studio, I'm grabbing the LA2A as opposed to 1176 because I've used them and know what they sound like, right? People who grab that in the software without ever having used the originals, I don't think it matters that much. I don't. I don't think it matters enough. There are some differences, but I think for the average user, the default, if you're compressing things down for dynamic range things to help even out a vocal or something, then great. If I really want a compressed bass sound, then I'm going to overdrive on the amp and on the rig and do it out there in that world. It's like, how many times do I put a compressor on a heavily distorted guitar? Hardly ever, because that's how the distortion happened in the first place. It's just like things. But I don't know if it matters. And then the other one from Bitumen was they only have the fat effects on the strip for the bass enhancer function. And they have an AU plugin called Sub Bass that takes away way less CPU and can probably do the exact same as the single tool. Exactly. And I don't know if this is all smart enough. I'd have to do an actual test with the fat effects if they're all turned off, if that means that there's no CPU usage being used, or if it takes a slot of power. Somebody who's smarter with the software part of that could maybe answer that question, or we could do a test at some point and see if we just have that one tool on, if it's really just taking such a small amount that it doesn't matter. And Bitumen also says, so you should be doing the live stream apparently, but if you get 50 engineers in the same room and tell them to make a channel strip for bass, 50 strips would look different. So true. They would look very different. Okay, cool. What else? So I like having the synth component into this, where I can program something out here and have it be a part of this instrument. Another thing that I was really interested in, and maybe this is a trick or a tip that we can use. Let me do this instrument as the external instrument for a moment. No, not MIDI destination. Not the external instrument. No, it is the external. Okay. External instrument. I want to make this the same bass, but instead of having a MIDI input, I'm going to do the internal MIDI routing from the bass up there. Oh, maybe that's not going to work. Let's try. MIDI out channel 1. There was something about my synth and channel 1. Maybe I can't figure that out right this second. Why is that not working? I'll have to think about that. My synthesizer has a weird thing about channel 1, but I didn't want to assign it that way. Let me see if it's even working this way. There was something about... Yeah, it's not. Oh, I know why. Never mind. It's an analog synth. Where I had the volume turned down. You actually have to look at your faceplate and make sure you don't just turn off the sound. Okay, cool. It's all working. Anyway, here's the thing I was gonna get to. So with the bounce in place, you have to have a region in the place already. And so one of the things that I was thinking about before I did the stream this morning was if I want to bounce in place, but I'm taking the internal MIDI from a different instrument, if I could just put an empty region for the amount that I wanted and then do the bounce in place that way. Let's find out, because that's what I was curious about. Nope, it's not working. Oof. Okay, so there are some flaws, and this is one of them that I was just curious about having to see if I could do it, but it looks like I can't. You'll have to record those in manually still. So the issue being bounce in place without the MIDI there, because the MIDI's coming from the internal MIDI input. Messes everything up. I also notice if you're using the internal MIDI in from one track to another track, that if you use MIDI effects on the second track, that those ones will delete your audio when you record. So there's a couple bugs with this I think we have to work out. But those are relatively complicated scenarios. Man, every once in a while, I think I need to replace my HDMI cable for my second monitor. Plastidon, a bunch of others commenting. Oh, talking about crashes still. Yeah, A. Malin says, I do the dummy region thing when bouncing buses in place. Exactly. That's what we have to do sometimes, but it's not apparently working with yet. It's because the original track is turned off for it for that moment. I was hoping with the real-time playback that it would play the other tracks for that, but apparently just the one that's being bounced in place. I wonder if, as a workaround, let's try one more thing real quick, just because I can't help myself. Weird. What the heck is happening? Oof. That's weird. Something was off about that. It's like my keyboard isn't working right now. That's weird. I might have a dialogue open or something someplace. No dialogue. What the? Okay, so here's what I was thinking. Oh my gosh. I'm losing my mind here. We may have to restart Logic. It's not crashing, but something is off. What would it be? Maybe it's working now. Let's see. Can we do 2 of those bounce in places at once? That's my question. Oh my gosh. Okay. Nope. Just that one. Okay. Still not have a real easy workaround for doing 2 of those. And something's happening with my keyboard. Oh no, it's working now. Something went a little bit of a gremlin there for a minute. Any input on my typing keyboard was no longer working for a second. So some things. And reminder, you'll have to do a search or find somebody who posted it. But if you find a bug, report it, because we are going to get an update shortly, fixing things. Shortly is relative. Shorter than 6 months, longer than today. We are going to get an update that fixes a number of things that they find right off the bat. things that weren't broken in the previous version, but somehow when they add session players, everything goes AWOL sideways, right? For sure. So we'll get some of that stuff sorted out. Back to the fun topic, though, of those, see? I can't delete tracks. What is happening? Something is wrong. It's like my mouse gets stuck. Not my mouse, my keyboard got stuck. Okay, let's do this for a second. Let's do the keyboard player for a moment. Block chords. Sure. You'll see with these that we have the fat effects. And it looks like we're using the band pass, the bit crush, the saturation, the filter, the drive, and the band reject. Not everything in large amounts. So relatively tastefully done. Fat effects is one of my favorite effects in Logic. Always has been since they brought it over. Cool. This is an example of how that might work. And then they put it through the Springbox pedal. I've noticed they've started using more of the pedals for whatever reason. And then it maybe makes sense after that to use a channel EQ to scoop out some of the low mids and maybe boost a little presence, right? So fine. This is an example, but still, this is on a, none of those are what I would think of on a piano personally. I don't even think it adds that much. It's very subtle. Okay, so that's an example. But let's look at the drummer. I did a video about the drummer over the weekend. And let's dig just for a minute a little bit more into parts of the drummer, because certainly there were a few things I was surprised about with the producer track primarily. Although I think the non-producer track is very similar, and we just don't have access to everything, but we'll go to SoCal. I hate it how it shifts right as I'm clicking. There we go. And we'll open this thing up. So a lot more routing going on in these ones, because of a reason I cannot imagine, but here we go. Yeah, that sounds like a technique I've used in the past. I've heard some of these get used, but to use them all simultaneously, it's like they heard some people say, they heard some people online say, man, those drums just don't sound as good as Easy Drummer or some other drummer. And so they were like, you know what? Mix the crap out of these things. And then they talk to somebody who like has this intense mixing scheme that involves a lot of different things. I mean, that. So the snare top and bottom. The snare top has the enveloper and a compressor, and the snare bottom has a EQ. Not even a gate. Maybe they've gated it at some other point. Those go into here, and they have the channel EQ, the compressor, chroma glow, and a graphic EQ. And then they go out 6 different buses. And each of these buses, they have a variety of things from reverbs 3 different reverbs, and then an EQ, EQ, fat effects, enveloper, and a distortion unit. Well, and a compressor. I mean, ooh. If you have to do that much to your drums, something's wrong. But stylistically speaking, I have seen some very successful engineers do things like this with their drums. I just think that, this is what I call an engineer who's trying to justify their existence in the studio. Instead of enhancing the musicians in the right way, they're doing it after the fact. I don't know. I've got some issues with this whole scheme. While it seems to be kind of the popular way to do it right now, I just don't know. That's really frustrating. So here's what I recommend to most of you, which is the unmixed producer kit. Let's see what they did with that. There you go. Unmixed producer kit. Three EQs later, a few compressors. Let's see what the snare bottom actually. A gate on the snare bottom. Oof. Some level adjustments. A few things later, and you're going to be just fine. You know what I mean? Don't fall into the trap of thinking you need all of that stuff. We should actually at some point maybe do a stream or a video about mixing the drums in the unmixed version and some of the choices that you can make. But you're not stuck with those kit pieces, right? Because that's really the first place of mixing. One of an engineer friend of mine, and I've experienced this too when I was living in North Carolina. In fact, I did one session with one of the best drummers I've ever worked with. He was at the time probably the #1 recorded drummer if you count country and like Christian music. He played on tons of albums, just so many you couldn't even count them. And he brought like a stripped down kit up to our studio that we had in the mountains, and he played I think 6 or 7 tunes, and they did one run through, and then they played the song. He never made a mistake except one time, but it was the chart that was wrong. Anyway, he never made a mistake, played everything perfectly. I learned a lot about recording and performing drums that day. But he brought his kit, and then he was like, I just brought a condensed kit. He only had 4 or 5 different snares with him. If you're working in Nashville and, with Cartage and the Union and stuff, I don't know. I think it's all still intact that way, but drummers don't bring their own drums to sessions when you're doing, in the gigs in that system. But they often, if it's a big profile session, they'll bring all of their snares, and they'll have 20 or 30 snares or 15 snares, and they'll play it through a song, and you're like, that's not the right snare for that. Let's not EQ it. Let's not compress it differently. Put a different snare drum on this, and you're going to get a lot closer to the sound you want than if you just mess around with processing after the fact. Let me read some of the comments. I'm catching up for a second. Don Michael says, have you run into the bug? Okay, blah, blah, no. I've heard about that bug, Don, but I have not run into it because I haven't tried to replicate it. Desmond does, yes, you can use the bass session player with third-party basses, although not all of the information translates since they have articulation things. Those won't necessarily go across. Oh, and then Corey says, not sure if you know this, but pressing I in the session mode will bring up MIDI in the piano roll. I'm going to try that real quick. So if you're in this mode and you push I, I don't know what you're. I don't know what you're saying, because that just gets rid of the inspector. Anyway, give me more information about that. And then Emilio says, have you run into the marker and cycle function using Command U bug? I have not yet. Yeah, I think there's some bugs with the commands. That sounds like what's happening here. Almost every bug I've heard, almost, not all of them, are bugs that have to do with key commands, which is interesting. There didn't really change much with that, so I don't know what's happening, but people are still able to do the functions other ways. It's just when you do key commands, sometimes it's messing things up. Cool. Anyway, so don't forget, if you're in this using the drummer, that you can come through, and your first line of attack should be, maybe if you don't like how the drum sounds, click on the drum, and then we have 1, 2, let's see if I can do this count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 different snares. All recorded apparently with round robin techniques and multiple, I don't know if they did multiple mic techniques really. Well, they did top and bottom, so yeah, multiple mic techniques. And then room mic things added in, although some of that may just be generated based on how they might sound. I think they probably did actually do some of that, but like leakage is one of the things that's a little tricky. They obviously could have recorded them with actual leakage, but they're just mixing that in after the fact, not as if you were recording it live, because they didn't record it with leakage live kind of thing. But they recorded the leakage with the other open microphones, and so then they just take some of those things and put them together. And then you can even come through and tune it and dampen it and gain and change, if they're in room A or room B, and if they are in the overheads or not. It's like, this should be the thing that anybody who ever says the drum kit design or the drummer track doesn't sound great, chances are they want it to do everything for them without having to think. They want it to come through, and that part I don't align with, I guess is what I would say. I feel like there's a certain amount of the historical value of how the music industry has done albums that we can learn from and still incorporate. And the new drummer track seems to want to get it closer to, some type of sound. But I'm not going to be using those drums as is all the time. I'm going to be going through and updating a lot of it, because I don't think every time that what they've given me is the right choice, for better or worse. And so there's that part of it. Now, some of the stuff, let's go through for a minute and look at, for instance, the brush work for a minute, the roots brush, right? So we'll do the Blue Ridge Plus. Also keep in mind that of all the stereo drummers, we have the Blue Ridge, Bluebird, Brooklyn, etc. down to Sunset. If you go into the producer kits, we have not twice as many, but almost, right? So we have more. And so don't ever just take the first thing you select. They have updated, as far as I can tell, all of them. Let's see what they've done with the Blue Ridge here. So this one, actually, maybe they didn't. They definitely didn't do as much as the other one. It does sound a little bit bigger, though, so they have done something. What do we got? Yeah. The Neve modeled EQ. I think it's funny that when because for a long time, a lot of their things were using the older EQs and things. And we had presets in Logic 10.8.1 that still used like almost legacy era things. And now they've updated it at least, which is nice. But I'm glad that they didn't just go overboard with every single kit. Let's try a couple of these other ones real quick. Wow, the Bluebird they did. Okay, Bluebird, Brooklyn. It's almost like they have different people assigned to different kits. However, I do sometimes feel strangely about EQ curves that look like this. Now, granted, sometimes we do need to pull down resonant frequencies and things, but sometimes, I mean, we're boosting 6 dB between 40 and 50 cycles. Something's wrong a little bit with that. And then toms. I mean, cool. Oh, we don't need to do all of that stuff all the time. And then Demolition looks like it's more purist approach in a way. Detroit Garage. Not too bad. A little bit of crazy stuff, but nothing like the SoCal. The snare. Look at that snare. Something. Okay, cool. We're just going to go through these for a minute because this is fun. So East Bay was mixed by the same person that did SoCal and Bluebird. Engineer A. Oh my gosh, look at the fake machine. What is the fake machine? Okay, that one makes sense. That's like a stylized drum machine approach. 4 on the floor. Same as the SoCal engineer, clearly. French connection. Oh, this is like the other ones. Doesn't sound bad. We don't need all those other effects. I'm sure this is going to be SoCal. No thanks. But maybe in the right situation. So that's another one of those affected kits. Liverpool. Yeah, that's some overkill again. Interesting. But going through these and learning the kits, I mean, if you're going to be using the drummer track, if you're ever going to be using the drummer track, you need to go through and actually explore all these things and learn what the instruments are. Because if you're just using one of them and thinking that you're getting the sound or whatever, I think that's a mistake. But go through and actually like figure out your tool. You're not going to like become an amazing guitar player by playing like 3 chords and thinking that you got it. Because if you play just 3 chords, you're not going to play that much anyway. But you need to actually like spend the time and practice. This is your instrument. Sounds interesting too. I actually like that as a starting place in some ways. Kind of obnoxious snare, but stylistically could work. That kick drum does hit hard on that one. Ooh, okay, roots. one, so there's a few of these that I hear, and if I'm not paying attention, like it actually sounds like I'm working with the drummer, right? Some of these don't sound like that. Some of them, you definitely hear them and you're like, okay, that's something's about that is just not quite true to life. And a few of these sound so good and were recorded just right and they're put together just right. And that was one of them, Roots. I think it just has that presence where everything, like the early reflections or whatever, are just all hitting just like a real kit. And that one sounds like it's a fake one. I mean, overprocessed, but I don't know if that 60 soul. I don't know. Something about the kick. It's like a real drummer, when they play the kick, it doesn't always sound exactly perfectly the same every time. We need more of that like humanization in there. I mean, SoCal sounds better than some of them. Speakeasy, really simple production here. And it doesn't sound bad. It doesn't, I mean, SoCal having 16 times more effects and routing doesn't make it sound that much better. Yeah, I hear that. Studio R&B. Sunset. Cool. We'll skip over and mix to vintage beats or breaks. I mean, let's see what they're doing with that one. And then the unmixed. So this is where, if you really want to learn this, you come through here and you build your own routing. And then you say save channel strip setting as, and you make your own drummers. I'd be curious to see statistically how many people are actually using that tool to its full capacity. And I feel like they should do a certification on it where you actually have to like study it and pass an exam on it, and then you're allowed to post negative things about it. That's what I feel. Because I think a lot of people say crap about these instruments. The drummer, I have the same complaints that some people do have. I say them out loud. But it's come from a place of like love. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I'm going to rag on my family. But if you rag on my family, you're dead to me. That's the attitude. So the drummer, now that they've updated all the mixes and they've added more functionality, now we need more of some other things. It's like they need to add another round of kits. And these ones have space for maybe up to 10 toms, 20 cymbals, 3 bass drums, 2 snares, all of the other percussion elements that a drummer may want to use. And you don't have to use them all, but you could add in as you wanted to and have them all attached to a performer that's able to do fills and other things with those kit pieces. It's possible. I mean, they did what they've done so far. They can do more. It becomes a little tricky. What would be the trickiest parts? If they're modeling this off of the way drummers play, they'd have to hire a drummer to help make all the patterns and make them make sense and not be too obvious. Because in reality, if you want to do that with the drummer kit, If you want to make it so that it has all of those other kit pieces, you can totally do it already. You can totally do that. You're not limited by this drummer track. It just won't automatically do it for you. You can load up another drum kit, tune them all differently, have the MIDI all, programmed out, and you could do fills and write in the MIDI for them, or get a, drum MIDI controller and play them in. You can do all of that stuff. It's just not an automatic function, if that makes sense. So if you want it to be automatically done, then we have to have somebody play them and have to come up with all the patterns and do it in a way that makes musical sense. Right now, these are more chameleon drums, meaning they're simple enough that they're going to fit in a variety of styles and not stick out as being obvious. If we listen to Neil Peart play drums with Rush, it's like, how long of a segment of music do you need to hear before you recognize that it's him playing drums on any of the tracks he recorded ever? Right? We all know, most people, a lot of people, some people, maybe not anymore. There was a time when anybody who did music production could hear like a second of Neil Peart playing drums, and we'd all know it was Neil Peart playing drums. You know what I mean? So we have to avoid that. So an expandable kit with different elements and the MIDI patterns to support that would be one thing. The other thing, of course, would be some additional styles. Reggae styles we can kind of mimic, but not really with some of the existing things. We can kind of do some really boring straight ahead jazz, but not really. Lots of metal variety, metal genres that we can't do unless we program it all ourselves. And so there are just some genres that I would love to see them expanded into. And I think if last week had come on Monday, if we all had gathered together to see the update and they had done everything they did, and the only difference was that they added 3 new genres. And they said, we're working on more genres. Here's 3 new ones. We're going to be adding some more in a future update, right? If they had just said that, tons of people would have already been like, okay, I get the vision for this. This is going to be awesome. And they start requesting, and they start, pleading their case for the one that they wanted. It would have made a big difference. But the fact that they just left them all exactly the same and just changed other stuff, well, that's a little trickier. The pianos sound amazing. I love the pianos. The bassing sound amazing. I'm still figuring out which of these actual session players I'm going to be using the most, because I'm typically, for my own music at least, I like to stick with kind of a set of instruments. This is something that I do myself that not everybody does, but I like to think of my songs as the output of ensemble. So it's like I have a bass player that I use the same kind of bass sounds for almost everything, because that for me is part of the sound that I envision and see and want. And so I'm not going to be using all of the bass session players for my own stuff. I'm going to find the 1 or 2 that I think really benefit what I'm going for, and I'll probably use those. In terms of the keys, 8 times out of 10 or 7 times out of 10, I'm going to just use my own playing, because that's, while I'm not like the most amazing piano player ever, I enjoy playing it, and I like playing with synthesizers, and so that will still be a part of it. The drums I've been using since they released them. I love the drummer. I see its weaknesses, but I understand how good it is integrated with everything, and so that part I really enjoy. I will say, my second monitor is driving me crazy. I will say, the part of this whole system that's AI is not a generative part. Nothing about these instruments make music for you. You can load the defaults and something will come out, but it's not making music for you. It's the timing parts. It's the way that they play off of each other. So I can come into my drummer, right, and say, you know what? I want my drummer. I want the rhythms to follow the bass player, or the piano player in this case. And so I want it to follow that. And so that changed the part. And that part will have a lot of variety depending on what the part I told it to go off of. But even if we were to come over and do something completely separate, so say I was able to pull like maybe I did an audio recording of my voice, then the drummer is going to play different if I tell it to follow my voice, and the keyboard to follow my voice, and the bass player to follow my voice, and then I do the groove track to have the timing all aligned. It's going to be different than it would be for anybody else. So that's, I think, the real strength of this is the customization that happens when it's in conjunction with the other tracks. And then Plastodon says, would be cool if they put the newer drummer into GarageBand, would be a useful tool for jamming. They might actually. I mean, we've done it back and forth. So we've had things come, like the step sequencer was just in GarageBand on the iPad for a while, and then they moved into the Logic Pro. And so I don't see why we wouldn't get some of these things moved back to the other way. So I'm guessing we will at some point. And then Gav Murray says the biggest problem with the session players is getting a setting back after you change it. Needs like 4 presets or something. I mean, I don't necessarily disagree. There's got to be a way to do some of that stuff better. Because I don't think... I'm curious if I pull that down, if I do undo. It goes back up. But it would be nice... Well, you can save down here. I don't know what I'm saving, though. Oh, there you go. Save session player preset. Okay, so you can do that, I guess. Like an audition feature. That makes sense. Like an A, B, C, and D. And if you just keep them all in place while you're working on it so you can get back and forth pretty easily. I like that. That would be useful. So here's the thing. I think Gav is totally right about this. These are tweakable instruments, right? There's so many different things you could be moving around, changing. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, I like what I did 6 ago. And so maybe having like some placeholder presets, like an A-B functionality so you can always get back to where you started, but then move on with what you liked as you changed it. That makes a lot of sense to me. Anytime there's such a tweakable experience, and this is what I find with analog synthesizers. One of the things I love about analog synthesizers is the tweakability of them. And so I'm looking over, I've got like all of these instruments to my right here that have plethora of knobs and things. And one of the things I love about Logic is how those type of things interplay with it. As long as you have MIDI. MIDI is the great equalizer for all of this stuff. But say we've got MIDI and an instrument, and I do a bunch of tweaks. Well, then I can use the auto sampler to like capture that version of the instrument in a software version and can just go about my life with that patch now becoming part of Logic. That's really cool. But if I like grab the wrong knob and start moving it around, and then I think, oh shoot, that is not what I wanted to grab, I'm never getting that exactly back. I can get it approximately back, but never exact, because those knobs are like freewheeling analog knobs, right? They're not. There's no preset functionality on it. Hold on, there we Little issue with my headphones. Okay, back. And so you got to like think about, it's a different world to think about, but in the software, there's no excuse for not having the sesh or the features supporting tweakability without losing what you're finding. Placidon says Apple could have purchased addictive drums. Those haven't been updated in like 10 years and are still some of the best sounding drums and cymbals. Cool. I think, again, I don't know if the samples themselves are actually horribly different. And maybe the new mixed drum kit designer in Logic makes our sound a little bit closer. But the potential for what we already have is so good. They just need to sort out some additional things. We need more. We need more of everything for it. And then Gav is saying, feeding the session players with Scalar 2. I saw a number of videos. I don't use Scalar 2. Partially because I do my own chords, I guess. I don't have a hard time. I don't do styles that require a bunch of like really strange chords. Every once in a while, I do like something, but I don't necessarily feel like I need scalar, but a lot of people do. Of course, the other thing about this, and let's just load up a empty thing here. And if any of you play piano, the new studio piano instrument is one of the best sounding. Even this one that's the Studio Grand 1 mic. Right, that sounds. It's so playable. It's the best one I've ever heard. So I'm going to try this for the first time. The trick I was seeing, I don't know if it'll fully work exactly right, but we have our own chord trigger inside Logic. Cool. And we have all of our intervals and triads, or we have our multis, so let's do keyboard voicings, jazz, pop, left hand. And I think I want to try it both ways real quick. We're going to do over here. And we'll do a new chord. I'm curious. Yeah, let's do preview. Let's do MIDI input. Yeah, so that may not work, but here's the thing that they were showing. I'm just curious if it'll work. Where you do record MIDI track to here. I don't know. Oh, come on. Stay out of my way. Oh. Okay, so that is the trick. It works with this too. So if you're doing, really quickly, let's do just a chord progression. So I have a bunch in here. And MIDI input, and then you do the tab key. So this works just like with Scalar too, it looks like. Yeah, so I'm able to use the chord trigger as a source for this. And so if you don't know chords, the one thing about Scalar that's nice is it does give you the option to like put together a song that makes sense. This one just gives you a bunch of chords and you have to like use your ears for it, essentially. But let's do option click this over here and we'll just play those ones we just did. So I just made those chords with the chord track instead of scalar. I think that's pretty easy. Let me catch up. But so if you want to pay for scalar, great. I think I've known a number of people who use scalar and they're happy with it, but it's not necessarily a requirement. If you just need some ideas, sound it out using the chord trigger inside Logic. And Gav is read Gav's comments throughout all of this. I mean, they're pretty right on target. Let's see, Red, how's it going? Let's see, I'm gonna. It sounds like you're a little disillusioned by things. Let me go down. Just to summarize some of that, these tools are not going to replace skill and creativity. I don't see how they're going to at all, because at least these ones in Logic. That's not to say other software is not going to, and they're not going to make things like super easy. Type in a sentence and you're going to get music that sounds professional in the output. We already have examples of that moving in that direction. Nothing I've heard sounds perfect. A lot of it's very digitized, and I think they're making it low quality on purpose. They're probably capable of higher quality, but they're trying not to just get sued outright, probably. But these are not those tools. These ones, you still have to like come up with the stuff, right? The input. And so if you can come up with the right input, then I do think that there's going to be the results that are still yours, still you, and sound amazing. So I don't have an issue necessarily with these tools. Like maybe some people thought we were going to be getting these AI tools that just write music for us. They're not that at all. What these are like helpful assistants, but they're only going to realize the vision that you come up with as a producer, songwriter, musician, engineer, you know? And Placidon was saying, I wonder if Apple will add the feature that TuneTrack has where you can record in a DI guitar or bass and the drums will follow your riffs. So this one won't follow your riffs exactly. But let's look at an example of this for a moment. Let me just get rid of that and this for a second. So we have drummer. I'm going to change the drummer because the drummer we have in here is not like a good guitar thing. We'll do pop rock for a second. And then we're going to come over here and just pull an Apple loop of something. So this is not necessarily, I'm not saying, okay, Apple loops are the greatest thing ever, right? Actually, let's try these two ones. No. Let's just find anything. So we're just going to do that for a second. Right, so then we come here to this, double click. I'm going to say, I want you to follow the 70s rock riffing guitar. So it's not doing much different, but it changed the pattern to be a more complementary pattern to what that audio file is doing. And then, again, we can come through here to our components, our track header components, add the groove track. I'm going to set the drums as the source for the groove and the guitar for the destination. So those two, they're starting to play tighter together. They're not actually what I think you were saying with the tune track, the riffing was maybe more extensive, but this does change depending on what we have in there. So let me find something. Let's try this one for a second. So this is a MIDI file instead of audio file, but it still works the same way. Let's have it follow the twangy electric. The part changes. So it's changing its snare kick pattern based on the other part that's in there. So a little bit of interaction happening. And that's, I think, the part that they're saying is smart. Let me see. Trevone Logan says, also forcing people to know theory and the way it'll inform your ear. That way is great. Overtime is great. I think that's right. I think what we're doing is still saying we're not just handing you stuff. And that's where a lot of people are like, well, I need scalar to help me do the scales and the chords. What you really need is maybe scalar at the very beginning. But never, ever use scalar without then asking the questions of why are those chords the ones that make sense? And then start learning about theory and the chord progressions and the circle of fifths and harmonic motion and structure, because that stuff, if you don't understand it now and you're using something like scalar, it's possible to learn it. People have been learning it for hundreds and hundreds of years, right? Longer. I mean, well, really, not much more than that, but couple thousand years if you count like Gregorian chants and things. We're always studying how to notate music and how it works together. And so that part you can master if you spend a little time. And don't be afraid. This is actually a tool that I'm suggesting now to a lot of people. If you go to ChatGPT and say, hey, my song, this program I'm using recommended this chord progression. Can you talk me through how that makes sense? Here's the difference between learning something with something like ChatGPT or reading a book about music theory. ChatGPT can take the exact situation you're looking at and explain it to you. And if you don't understand it, you can say, explain it to me like I'm a third grader. And then it'll dumb it down, the language, and it'll explain it to you. And then you can say, okay, I get that. Go up to like 8th grade, and it'll explain it again with a little bit more complexity. But it's always doing it to what you're asking in that current situation. I think learning music theory from a book is going to be a bunch of information that applies nothing to what you're doing. And so the learning process becomes very difficult. The learning curve is very steep. So take AI, a tool that's actually really good at explaining things at different language levels and comprehension and addressing the situation that's right in front of it, and use that. That's the time we should all be like, AI is cool and it's working. Gina says, the chord track is filled with bugs. I haven't found too many of them myself. I know that I don't like how the chord track always works. Like when you get these 8-bar things, it's like the mind meld. Who designed that? And why did they design it like that? You don't have to do it that way, but that's like the default functionality of it. And so that part drives me bonkers. However, you can like click into it and move them around. I mean, you can do all of that stuff. It's just not intuitive all the time. It took me a little bit of time to really wrap my brain around it. Go through and read and watch videos. There's been some great videos on the chord track already made. Even music help tech guy who made like a video about the chord track and then had to come back and make a second one because missed things. And that's like, that shouldn't happen with a new feature with the people at the top of the, the food chain in terms of understanding and having had the beta or whatever. It's like it shouldn't have to be made a second video with the things that they forgot or missed or didn't explain clearly on the first one. It's not as good as it could be. But again, it's like day 7 now or day 8, right? We're just hitting the point where they're going to figure out and they're going to make some changes and it'll get refined over time. That doesn't mean it's a reason not to use it. No software comes out perfect the first time. Nothing does. And so we have to sometimes, we'll use it and master it as need be. And the next version of it will get tweaked and we'll think, oh man, so glad that they finally added this. Or why haven't they changed this thing that's driving me crazy? Right now, it's also too limited. It only works with these session things. Why can't we actually have it interact with our other MIDI files too? We can a little bit in the sense that when we pull this down, we pull the chord track down and it has the chords in the actual regions. But if I change like one of these here, let's add like a 9. That one still is going to follow the original. And I can't say follow the chord track with this. Although I can say analyze keys. There's like clues to it doing more. It's just not doing more yet. Scott is asking, do you recommend updating to 11 or wait? I'd like to work with it, but there's still a lot to learn via the iPad. So, I mean, Scott, no matter what, I would wait till they come out with the very next update because it's going to fix a bunch of the bugs that are happening right now. And there are some bugs happening right now. And I don't think anybody, unless they're really a glutton for punishment, should jump into a bug place. But once they get like the next version and fix some of those basic bugs is when I typically say everyone else, start jumping into this thing. When I create a track, 2 chords get created. When I click on a chord, the chord beside it gets selected. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Here's another thing that I wish we could do with this. If we are going to, let us do these chords like this, there's got to be a way. So we can do this where we take the chords from a MIDI region up into there. And one of the things I've been thinking about is how to make presets of the chord track. So hear me out for this for a second. Right now, if we do it to a time signature, we have these things called time signature sets, new set, duplicate set. And if we go to the tempo, we have these things called tempo sets. If we go to the marker, we have marker sets. If we go to the arrangement, we don't. And we go to the chord, we don't. Right? So we can't make alternate sets of these things. But what we can do is go in here to we can do all chords in the range, which it didn't do, but it should be able to. So now we have this, right? So we could just have a track that's hidden someplace in our project or with all of our typical ones, and we can just bring those up and make our own presets out of our regions. And so I'm trying to think. I hope that this is just like a short-term band-aid if I want to save some of my sets, because I really find that would be useful to have the ability to do our own presets and our own chord progressions, things that we might use all the time, or certain riffs that we like that we want to put into a place or whatever. Let's see, catching up again on the comments. So Skirmantis is talking about something that is, I did read a lot about this as well, the pitch source, but it's not a chord change. That's like a transposition for key changes as far as I understand. Left in the region box. Let me check it out real quick. Pitch source. So key signature or off. It doesn't actually do, as far as I know, it doesn't actually do the actual individual chords. That's just like the replacement for the transposition global track, which I don't know if anyone noticed. The transpose thing went away. We don't have a transposition thing anymore. Now it's just key signature. So if I have a MIDI file, it will get transposed only when I change keys, not when I do chord progression. Anyway. Can you over how to make the chord track syncopated? What exactly are you looking for with the syncopated chord track? Can you explain a little bit more of that question, and I'll see if I can answer it. I'm reading Bitterman's comments about the chord track. I'm assuming what they're asking is this. Let's go and deep dive here for a second on bar 1 of the song. Yeah, we're on bar 1. So bar 1, beat 2, beat 3, beat 4. And so if we come in here and we do beat 1, beat 2, on beat 3, we start with a chord. I hate how it shifts over when I do that too. I mean, it's not the end of the world, but we'll do a major chord right there. On beat 3 and a half, we'll add another chord. One, 2, and we'll do D minor for that one. So 1, 2 and a half. On beat 2 and a half, we'll go back to the other chord. B flat, major. So now I've got 1, 2, and, oh, I went too far. Those are just like the beats. Are they? Let's see if I can do this. There we go. So 1, 2, 3, and we'll do this one right there. So those are on the off, not the, they're on the ands, the off beats. And the drums currently looks like they're set to follow the chord rhythm. So you're actually hearing the kick and stuff on those. Bum, 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 right? And then if we did piano, wow, there still is a bug with that apparently. Let's do a new software instrument, bass player. I hope this is what you were asking because you're getting it either way. So that little rhythmic thing at the beginning. Right, and if we have the keyboard player, black chords. And then we can I mean, we could copy and paste that over. The easiest way to copy and paste that over, ironically, in my opinion, is to do it like this. Let's split it. Right on B3. There we go. Let's mute those things. Oof. It's kind of loud. Catching up again with the comments. Yeah. So can we go shorter than that? I don't actually know exactly how short a chord can be. But let's do sub things. I mean, that messes up the drums because they're following it. But we can do, looks like sub measures and do all kinds of small stuff. So cool. Gav says, today I used a keyboard session player playing freely to trigger the Logic classical guitar with some interesting. Yeah, you can assign all kinds of instruments, which is nice for sure. How long have we been going? Hour and a half. We're going to go a little longer, I think. Just because. Why not? Other questions or things? This is a good discussion so far. I do think I'm going to be using the keyboard thing without the piano a lot. And so I'll end up using it with various things. I'm assuming I'll use it with sculpture a bunch at different times. Let's see, what do we... Maybe some percussion things with it. Glockenspiel. Synthesizers, marimbas. I mean, we're going to be using that with a bunch of different things overall. Mallet instruments, let's do that. Let's see, xylophone. Let's see, Red says, sorry to jump off for a couple minutes. Have you just dragged a MIDI chord progression into the chord track? Yes, I did, but it was one that I had dragged off of the chord progression first. So that's the only ones that you can drag up there. If you drag it out, you have these ones that have the chord things at the bottom. I can always pull them back up in there, although it's making me stick to a weird place. You can always drag it up into it again. So I can do this one and just expand it out. Although it's making me go over there for some reason. I don't know why. There we go. So it's a way to store chords that you want to use later. Bitterman says, I need all the session players to have more options similar to how drummer felt before, because I can throw on a house bass line MIDI instrument on the bassist, and the only way to get is to use the manual pattern creator. And that's actually part of the reason why we have that thing. Is for situations like that to a certain degree. And it's not a bad thing. So the manual one where you get to type in the pattern is one that I need to really explore more and figure out just how I want to do it. But if we're doing the same thing here, it's like, I gotta remember, dun, 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 dun. That's snare. It's loud. So, that's going to be the way to really, it's like you can take the rhythmic stuff and do it off of other instruments. You can do it off of each other, and the pattern you choose as the main thing is the source. You can have them all be different, not connected. You can make the chord changes be that or this thing. So there's like, you have to understand which one's going to be the right one in the right place. And Red, I think it's going to be able to eventually, but we just haven't got there yet. And I don't know why. But it's like, I don't even know why I can't come in really and tell it to be chords. I don't know. There's some work to do on the chord track, but it's better than we've had in the past. And then Gav is saying that the screen here needs to tell us where. Oh my gosh, that would be so useful. Meaning that there's a little indicator of where we are in the pattern as it's going. I'm assuming that's what you're talking about. That would be really smart. But at least we can go up to 4 bars with this and change things and really come up with some decently complex, cool rhythmic ideas for it. It's still relatively simple in the sense that it's like quarter notes, but I can't always easily say I want a hi-hat pattern or something that's doing 16th notes or 8th notes or whatever. Bitumen would love to see you find a way to make the piano write one-handed melodies that play over the chords. There is a way for it to do one-handed melodies over the chords. It's called using your one hand. So sorry. They're probably not going to be adding melodic content. That's perhaps where you get in trouble. Melodic content. So what we've seen in the courts in the last 5 years, songs that infringe on copyright are no longer just melodic copyright and words and melody. Used to be that if you kept those two things separate enough that you'd be fine. Now they're saying that the aesthetic of a song can be infringement. But there's no way that they're going to start doing melodies in here because that's the part where it's the gray area, I think. That's my own opinion. Scott says, maybe a basic question, but can you indicate chord inversions like in scalar? Ooh, that's not a basic question at all. That's a good question. Yes, with the chord track, you definitely can. And the way you do that is you say a different bass note than the original. So if we have a D minor chord, actually I have that chord trigger turned on. Let me turn that off. Right, if we have that, yeah, so let's turn off that thing for a second. Right, so we have that. Oh, still don't want that on. We just say different bass note, so we could do an A is the bass, so that's the second inversion. Come on, D minor A. What is happening? One of those little fun bugs. Okay, cool. So it's doing the D chord with the A in the bass. And then it goes to the B flat. So that's just like the half step up and down, even though they're two different chords that are not next to each other. So yeah, we can definitely do that. You just have to know, and if you're doing it with a MIDI input or even through a scalar input, because you can do that straight from scalar, just make sure that they're doing the inversion. But if they aren't showing it up right, then, well, let me see. If I do... So that's that second inversion. Let me just play this with the MIDI now. It's not doing the second inversion, even though I'm playing it that way. So you may have to come through and actually change some of those yourself. That seems like a shortcoming too, that it won't register that I'm playing the A and the bass. It does A, no, third, 11th, sharp 5th. What the heck is that even? No. I have no idea. Oh, maybe it's because the chord trigger is still loaded. I don't have any idea what's happening. Hold on, let me check that out again. That makes no sense. I mean, I understand why I did it, because I put the A down an octave, and so it thinks it's an A chord, and it's just fitting the rest of the D minor into the chord. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, then that's okay. I don't think I do either right this second. But it looks like you can't play in the inversions. You have to add in the inversions manually to answer your question. That's a really good question. I don't know how many, so music theory is the thing. Here's the problem with this interface, or the strength and the weakness. One is that it doesn't give you anything. It doesn't tell you anything about music theory. It doesn't instruct you on what you should do. It literally is trying to be as functional and simple as possible. And it assumes you know everything about music theory, right? It assumes you know everything. So if you don't, then it's not going to do anything for you. You need to actually figure that part out. Placidon said, is it set to a specific scale in the chord track? Well, it does tie into the key signature. So if I change the key signature, that will change the chords, but I don't think it influences what chords you're playing in. And Gav says, I think this is where scalar helps for people lacking. I agree. My only recommendation, and like I said earlier, I think scalar is great for a lot of people. My only recommendation is never just take scalar at face value either. Like, if it gives you something as an output, figure out why. Figure out what it means. Figure out what the notes are. Use scalar to help teach you music theory. Don't just let it help you make songs. And then Travone says, great tool to test music theory out and learn. Yeah, so this, I think, works in conjunction with something like scalar too. Maybe at some point you'll be graduated from the world of scalar and you can just put in your own chords here. But cool, right? So let's do, look at all this mess I made in here. Let's just get rid of all that stuff, right? And we'll get rid of all that stuff. We're in the key of D minor. Let's change the key though. Say that we just want to go to C for a little bit. Oh, C minor. Let's do C major. Happy key. So first of all, we can do a chord track, and they do have some of the most basic progressions. 1 5 6 4 1 6 4 5 2 1 6 5. Okay, we'll use one of those. Let's get rid of that. All these things really. So this is where you can mess around. Say you're learning music theory and you're saying, okay, I'm beginning to see how these chords all fit into the key of C. But you're like, I was learning about this thing. 5 7s, or major. We'll see. Which one do we want? You're like, nope, that isn't what I wanted. So it is a way to be able to test out what that sounds like. And it plays whatever you do. You can also, of course, hit the preview button. Yeah, let's try that one. So you get to actually experiment in there, which I like. Let's see. I was wondering that question. This is from Bitterman about the little chord track that sometimes we see in here. So it's right. I'm going to zoom up. Bottom left. You see the little chord right there. In theory, yes. So here's the soul jam guitar riff one. But let's pull it out and see what it says. So there's E5, B5, A5. In two parts. One of them is I should be able to undo that. I'm going to right click on this, go to chords and say, I can't have it follow. Ugh. This is one of the things that I'm a little bit frustrated by. Yes. The simple answer is I can drag that up and it will go into the chord track. Yeah, that's the simple thing. If I pull this over, it will line up there. And so now those two things play together. Right? So we have that. Here's the part I don't like is when I drag this onto here, sometimes it comes with it and sometimes it doesn't. So I don't even know. It's like I got to sort out. So let's have it follow this whole thing the whole way through. That doesn't sound like it's changing, but... So I feel like everything else can match that, but it's not doing a good job of matching the other stuff. So as long as I put it on the chords that are it, then it seems to be okay. Options in the loop, library, bottom left. I don't know. Ooh, okay. I hadn't seen that. So automatic, I can have it replace or keep the region chords. Okay, good to know. Thank you for that tip. I hadn't actually explored that, Red. So this case, let's try one more time. Yeah, it still sounds like doesn't sound like it's changing itself though. And I don't know if pitch source, key signature, there's just too many question marks. But if we bring it out and we use the chords, then the rest of the stuff will match those. That much we know. Ugh, that's frustrating. Okay. I wonder if the MIDI loops with this change work better. Let's find out. I'm down for finding that out too. Oh, because I've got that really filtered. Okay. I'll do that. That's fine. So that brings out... Okay, let's undo that. Let's do replace... Oh, no, I wanted to do it the other way. I'll do it that way. Okay, so we're going to bring that out first. And it has the chord. And then I need to deselect. That's what I did wrong the first time. They were both selected when I brought them in. Oh, hold on a second. We're going to do that all one more time. Because I brought it in as an audio file. Okay, so this is what it sounds like originally. And let's bring it into this ASUS. It's still not changing to match the global. And it's not letting me have it follow it. Useless. Flex pitch might make it follow the chord. I don't see it over here. So let's see. Transpose. There should be something in there, but I just think that it's not that smart. It's not. I haven't got any MIDI to follow the chord track, but we can bring these in and make the session instruments follow them. Okay, I actually have to wrap up. This was really informative and useful for me. We went about 2 hours. I feel like we need to do another one of these next Monday. So we'll see how much ground we've covered in a week and then 2 weeks. And unless there's an update of some size in between, then we'll do a stream just to talk about that. But look for more videos that I'm putting out about various features. I think I'll make one about this that we just talked about because it's useful and I don't think everybody understands it fully. We'll talk to you all later. Thanks, everybody.